super easy to fall in that trap and become over leveraged. So I think, one big thing that I've learned from seeing what happened to my parents back in the recession, and especially my dad, is to not get over leveraged. Don't fall into that trap and actually have contingencies that you don't touch.
My name is Kevin McIntosh, and this is the Closing Table, where we talk to experts about their experience in real estate all across the country. Let's go. Welcome to the Closing Table. I am your host, Kevin McIntosh. Joining us on this episode, we will be sitting down and talking to a top producing agent and developer, Auston Cook. How you doing, Auston?
Hey guys, how you doing?
Good. Thank you so much for being with us here today, sir. You have a very interesting career and background. Prior to even entering real estate, you attended the University of Michigan, which you obtained your degree in mathematics. Very impressive, if I must say so myself, math being one of my favorite subjects in school. Now, how did your experience in college shape your perspective of the world in general?
Yeah, as I say, Kevin, it'd probably only be your favorite subject till you get into that stuff. And
I
then
know.
it was mine too. And then all of a sudden they're giving me equations that take 70 pages to complete.
Man,
It
I
was
got the standard deviation. I was like, yeah, let me just
Oh, yeah. So, it's always your favorite. And then all of a sudden it was not my favorite anymore. So,
right.
oh, man. But yeah, so I got the degree in math. And I was expecting to do something with it, maybe statistics or something. And, it just didn't pan out that way. So,
Right. Mm, mm. So you also have grown up under your father, who is a real estate developer himself, right? And he's
yep.
been doing it for quite some time, pre 2008 market crash, correct?
Yeah. So he's pretty much, yeah. So he's been a developer since like the 70s. So
Oh,
he's
wow.
yeah, very very successful in it. And he's been a real estate broker as well. And basically growing up in the recession, that's when I was in high school. We went from
Mm-hmm.
having everything to losing everything overnight. And seeing all that, see how hard my dad worked for 30 years, and then he lost it all. It kind of rubbed me the wrong way. I was like, why would anyone want to go into real estate?
I bet.
So I kind of went on with my stuff, got my degree from U of M, and I didn't actually know what I really wanted to do. And that's where I graduated, and I loved climbing. So I jumped in my car, became a mountain guide out west, guided for the better
Nice.
part of a year, ended up falling and breaking my foot. And a broken foot mountain guide is not a very good mountain guide. So
No.
I was living out of my car at the time, and I was broke, and ended up having to move into my dad's basement, and
Mm,
needed a job for a couple months. And that's kind of where this all kind of spun about. I was like, obviously I don't want to use my math degree here and get a job, like an official job, and only have to work 2 months and then quit. And I want to get back
right.
guiding after my foot's better. So I ended up getting a sales job. I was like, okay, so I can do physical therapy for the next couple months. I can heal my foot while I'm in my dad's basement, make a few bucks selling some stuff, and then go back out and guide again. Well, I got into the solar panel sales, like a little company called Modern Mill Solar out of Royal Oak. And
Mhm.
basically, what happened, Kevin, was within 2 months, I became the number one solar panel salesman.
Wow.
And I kept
Shout out
getting,
to that.
thank you. Well, in my defense, though, there were only 12 guys. So there are only 12 of us. But we'll take the clap. Uh, you know, and what I realized is that people kept asking me, well, if I put a $30,000 solar panel system on my roof, what's that going to do to my homeowner's insurance? So I
Mm,
started looking it up, and I realized that in the state of Michigan, we have one of the highest insurance rates in the country.
yes.
Yeah, we got that
Yes.
no fault auto.
Mm-hmm.
So, and what people
Correct.
were doing is they're bundling home and auto, and they were just looking at the total cost. So in my head, I realized, wow, these people are actually asking me, how the solar panels are going to affect their homeowners insurance. They're really concerned about the price of their homeowners insurance. So what I did is I went to the state of Michigan and got my license to sell insurance. And so I started going on the when I was going on the appointment to sell solar panels, I'm now selling insurance as well.
Mm.
So I would double dip on the sales. The
Yep,
company set
yep.
me up for the marketing. I would now double dip and make as much money as I could. And then from there I realized the insurance is more scalable. Went right on full time into the insurance industry and started building relationships with auto dealers and real estate brokers. So when they were selling a new car or a new house, then I could write the policy. Looked
Correct.
at, looked at a settlement statement one day, saw that realtor was making $10,000 a sale. I said, "What the hell is this?" I'm making a
Easy choice, right?
yeah, easy choice. That's right, Kevin. Man, I was making $100 a sale for the insurance. So I was like,
Oh, wow.
and this is kind of where my dad gets looped back in. I go to him and I'm
Hmm.
like, Dad, is this for real? Are these guys really making $10,000 a sale? He goes, yeah. I was like, I need to get in on this. And that's how I actually kind of stumbled into the real estate game. Just kind of working my way up, getting my feet wet one thing at a time, going from uh, selling, solar panels to insurance to then selling houses. So,
Isn't it crazy how you have something right there under your nose, your father being in that industry, and you pretty much try to avoid it for your whole your whole life until you get to a point where you realize this is actually a very lucrative business. How crazy is that? Like, I feel like
yeah,
that happens often.
yeah, it is funny that you mention it because I think it does happen often. And I think that's just, part of us, being youthful and
Mhm.
not
Yeah, yeah.
wanting to do what our father or our mothers have done and wanting to kind of pave our own path. And then sometimes we realize, well, there's already some pavement on that path. Why don't we work on resurfacing that?
Pick
So
it up. Yeah,
yeah,
man.
exactly,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah. So let's keep it within that realm then. What regarding your father's recovery
Mhm.
from the housing crash, how would you avoid some negative effects of a housing crash in the future?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So a couple of things that I've really learned is one, don't be over leveraged. So being over
Mm.
leveraged is a super easy thing to do when you're an investor or developer because you can get all this money from the bank.
Yep.
Right now it's closer to 7.5%. But still that's pretty cheap money. If you can
Hmm.
go make 50% off this money and you're only paying a bank 7.5, you're keeping the difference.
Precisely.
So it's super easy to fall in that trap and become over leveraged. So I think, one big thing that I've learned from seeing what happened to my parents back in the recession, and especially my dad, is to not get over leveraged. Don't fall into that trap and actually have contingencies that you don't touch. So I have a couple of houses that are free and clear that I could refi and I could use that money to make more money, but I don't touch them
There you
because
go.
basically those are my two piggy banks. In case
Mm.
really rainy days come, I have two houses where I either have to sell or refinance now, and I can use that money to keep me afloat. But that's
Very smart.
absolute last ditch scenario. So that'd
Gotcha.
be that'd be my biggest thing. We're in kind of turbulent waters right now, and just keeping your leverage low and keeping those reserve funds in a way that you can't really touch. Because I
Right.
to touch those reserve funds, I got to go sell my two rental houses
Hmm.
or
Hmm.
refinance them, and that's a long process. So
Correct.
yep, and it's costly. So that's much better in my opinion to have that money tied up in an asset that's not super accessible as opposed to if I had, let's say I had a couple 100,000 sitting in that checking account. Well,
Correct.
that,
Yeah.
that's gone next month. Shoot, I'm shopping spree. So, so that's the difference there. That's what I would say for all the listeners here. Definitely
Hmm.
don't fall into that trap of getting over leveraged. And two, have your reserve funds in an area that you can't easily access them.
Very, very well said, man. Watching that liquidity, I mean, like the process of liquidity or just having liquid assets can definitely burn out a lot faster. And if you have the ability to keep your assets in a place like a house or property or something like that, I think that's very, very smart to keep that and use that as what you call a piggy bank. and not fall into the trap of, oh, I get they're offering this much for from this bank. I can invest in this property that I want to do, and I can do this and that. So then what happens when banks go under, like they just recently did? You're stuck in a very, very sticky situation. I really like that response, Austin, by the way. That was great.
Yeah, it's definitely a little contrarian, especially, coming from I'm an investor, and
Correct.
most investors say leverage as much as you can,
Exactly.
use that cheap money. But I saw what happened when my dad, who's also a professional investor and developer, when he did that strategy, and when all hell broke loose, things could have been avoided by just having that little bit of unaccessible, well,
Mm-hmm.
or hard
Mm-hmm.
hard to access piggy bank, and then also just not over leveraging. So
That's a fact. That's a
yeah,
fact. Nice game, man. Appreciate that. Cook and Associates Realty. That's the name of your family-owned business, correct?
correct. Yep, that's our brokerage, Cooking Associates.
Okay. So this is a family-owned brokerage. Which generation actually started this business and
Yeah,
why? Do you remember? Do you know that much?
yeah. So it was my dad. He started it up in 19. Oh, so he got into real estate in 1977.
Okay.
And then he started the brokerage in 1979, actually.
Mm.
So basically, a couple years after he got into real estate, he started up, and it was actually a Century 21 franchise at first. Um,
Okay.
so it was Cook and Associates Century 21, and at this time in 1979, that's before the series of mini recessions that we had in the 80s. We had one
Mm-hmm.
in
Mm-hmm.
1981, 1983,
Correct.
and essentially at that time there were 14 brokerages in Westland. Westland, it was like a newer place, just developed, nicer
Yep.
area. And essentially, my dad, he had one right on Ford Road in Westland. That's where the Cook and Associates Century 21 was. And the recession hit. The one, I think it may have been, I don't know, 83.
Mm.
And out of those 14 brokerages, 11 of them went under. So, what my dad realized is that he just needed to stay afloat. He's like, well, a recession, they normally don't last longer than 9 months. He's like, if we can weather this storm and somehow keep my all of my guys, all my salespeople employed during this, then he knew that he was going to come out on top.
For
So,
sure.
and this is in the early 80s when people still had a lot of wood burning stoves. So, what he did is he started ordering
Mm.
truckloads of logs from the UP to come down to Westland. And then when his salesmen, his real estate sales guys, weren't selling houses because it was really slow, they would come in, they would chop firewood and sell it off of Ford Road.
Right.
There was no Amazon there. How you got driving
Mm-hmm.
down the road and you see something that looks good on the side of the road, you stop and you buy it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. We need that wood for our stove anyway. Let's go ahead and pull over and get
Exactly. They
that.
started selling firewood. They started making sweaters, like they were knitting sweaters and stuff, and selling it on his because he had a good location off of Ford Road.
Mm.
So everyone's driving by and they started buying stuff. So they weren't thriving, but they were able to survive off this income. So then when the recession ended, well, now Cook and Associates was one of the three remaining out of 14 brokerages. So all those agents now came back to work from the other brokerages that didn't exist, and they all came to Cook and Associates. So then my dad basically took all of them, had a big brokerages, and sold out and went independent. So yeah, so it was that's kind of our
Nice.
history of Cook and Associates, and then he ran it very small independent brokerage because he switched over to developing primarily as a real estate
Mm-hmm.
developer after that recession, after he sold out, because he took that money and he bought a big piece of land and developed it in Plymouth. And so then since then, we've been a small independent brokerage. We have about 5 agents, and we like to keep it that way. Uh,
Okay.
yeah. So
Nice.
that's kind of the
Nice.
history of us, a little different. So
Beautiful. Since we already spoke about you kind of avoiding the real estate industry until you saw it being lucrative, right? Even though your father was involved. Let's talk about the let's say the I don't know, hypothetical situation that your kids grow up
mhm,
and they're at a decision or a fork in the road in life where they choose to either go down the company business route or they go somewhere else.
yeah,
Would you want them to pick up the family business route, or would you rather them go on a different route?
that's an interesting question. uh, because it was never really pushed on me, and I've kind of found my own way into it. And having my dad
Mm,
as a mentor has been incredible. And it's really been a close relationship with us, and it's really strengthened our bond, father son bond. And I see that my other siblings don't have that. So in one sense, yes, I would be at least sway them more towards coming and doing real estate. But
right.
at the same time, I think there's a lot of value in finding your own way into it.
Yeah,
Um,
man.
so like if he told me to come into real estate, I probably would have pushed back.
Mm-hmm.
So you
That's a
know,
good point.
I think I think it can go either way. I think it just would really depend on my relationship with that child.
Mm.
Um, and I think if they saw interest in it, or if they weren't sure what to do, then I'd pull them in. But if they really were not interested in it, then they probably wouldn't excel in it because it's a lot of
Ooh,
work. So, they got to be invested into it.
great point. I could think of man, you hitting on some stuff, Austin. I could think of so many different scenarios where my parents kind of forced something on me as a child, and then I grew up to kind of resent it a little bit, like, or just like, "Ah, I don't want to do that anymore."
Oh
You
yeah,
see
yeah.
what I'm saying?
Oh yeah,
So that's I like that, letting them find a way. You literally naturally found your way to the family owned and operated business, man. It's beautiful.
yeah. No, definitely. And I think that you're absolutely right, Kevin. Like, think about all the times when we were kids and our parents told us, "Hey, do this, don't do this." It's like we don't want to listen. So,
Exactly. I want to be rebellious for no reason.
but yeah, exactly.
So Cook Development Company now is this your own development company, or is this like a continuation of your father's company?
Yeah, it's a great question. So it's a continuation. So I have my
Okay. Okay.
I have my own company, Streamline Property Solutions, but that's an
Mm,
investment company. So
okay.
that's what now personally I've kind of part of my dad has his own business. I have
Correct.
my own business, and then we have business together.
Correct.
And so Cook Building Co. is something that we have together now. He started it back in the 80s,
Hmm.
and then basically, that's where I'm building the houses, kind of in the Plymouth area, Monroe, places like that, using that infrastructure. And then I've kind of broken off of that, and I got into my own investment company, which is Streamline Property Solutions, which we're now doing hotel investing, apartment investing, things
Mm,
like that. Yeah,
great segue, by the way, Austin, because I want to talk about this project, Bay Inn at Petowsky Bay.
yeah,
That is a historic, huge hotel for first off.
yeah,
Can you talk about the motivation behind wanting to renovate this hotel?
yeah, 100%. So, Kevin, it's kind of funny. I've been in the real estate industry for 3.5 years now. And for I want to say the first 3 years, I had 2.5 years. So until a year ago, I had no interest in keeping long-term rentals. Really, a little bit
Hmm.
of interest, but not a lot. And then I just wanted to develop. I wanted to develop and build houses.
Right.
But last January, so January 2022, um, I was sitting on a beach in Florida for New Year's, and I was renting this people's Airbnb, and I was thinking to myself, I'm like, wow, these people are renting this place out for, you know, uh, $2,000 a week. They're probably renting
Hmm.
out at least 50 weeks a year. They're making $100,000 off this Airbnb.
Yes,
I'm thinking,
sir.
I'm thinking to myself, man, I wish I could make that much building a house, and building a house is a hell of a lot more work.
Yeah.
So that's when the idea kind of hit me. I called up my partner when I was on the beach, and I was like, "Hey, man, you want to buy an Airbnb? You take it 1 week of the year. I'll take it 1 week of the year. We rent it out 50." And he was like, oh, "I love that idea." He was like, "Where?" I was like, "Let's do Traverse City." So basically, we ended up then last March. For all the listeners here, we're recording this in March of 2023. Uh,
Hmm.
so March of 2022, last March, we ended up buying an Airbnb together in Traverse City, and it went really well. Before we actually even had it set up, though, we ended up buying a second one in April of 2022. So now we
Wow.
got two. We got two Airbnbs, basically back to back. They're the old homeowners are still living in it, and we're driving back from the closing from Traverse City, coming back down to the Detroit area, and I was actually on another podcast, so we listened to my podcast. It was with Brent Daniels,
Okay.
and this guy named Tim Bratz comes on after. He's on the next podcast after, and we're like, oh, who's this guy? I don't know. Let's listen to him. This guy went from having nothing to 5,000 apartments in like 7 years, and we were like, we were in the wrong business. What are we doing buying single family? We thought we were like big ballers. We just bought two rental houses. And we're like, and this guy went from like 0 to 7,000. And we are like, oh, smoke. So what we're doing is not scalable, is what we realized right away.
Mm,
There's no way we could ever get to the income of having 7,000 doors if we're buying them one at a time. We have to get into multifamily and buy a bunch all at once. So that's kind of when we went down the rabbit hole, learning everything we could about commercial real estate. This was last
mhm.
spring. And, the goal, we set a goal for ourselves in July when we kind of finally, it took us a few months to really understand commercial real estate. We studied it every day for
Right.
like 3 months. In July, we came up with the conclusion. We're like, okay, here's what we got to do. We got to get 100 units by next July. So we set that goal to get 100 commercial units. Right now, we're at about 55. So we got to get 45 more in the next
Nice.
5 months. So
Nice.
that's the goal. But yeah, so basically what happened was we were just targeting apartments, but my partner
Hmm.
ended up staying at the Bay Inn for a wedding, and he saw this old man slaving away, doing everything, like working really hard. And my partner's like, "How old are you?" He asked him. The guy's like, "Oh, I'm 78." He's like, why are you working so hard? Like, do you?
Right, right.
Oh, I own this place. And then my
How did I
partner's
know?
like,
Yeah.
well, do you want to retire? And then the guy's like, I'd love to retire, but my wife, she loves this place, blah, blah, blah. So I ended up driving up there the next weekend with a purchase agreement in hand. Sat down at the kitchen table, negotiated for a couple hours, and ended up walking out with the signed purchase agreement for a price that made sense. So we got the place locked up at 2.5 million.
Woo.
Um, we had about $600,000 to invest into it to make it to really bring the value up to renovate.
Right.
So
Hmm.
all in, we were all in at about 3.1 million, and the pro forma after repair value should be about 4.6, 4.7 million. Um, so we're creating an equity spread of over $1.5 million off one project, and that's the
Yes.
power of commercial real estate. Um,
Oh my goodness,
Yeah,
man.
so that's what got us into the Bay Inn, and that's how we got our feet wet in commercial real estate because we realized the scalability of it. We just can never do that in residential. What residential house, especially in Michigan, are we going to buy where we can make 1.5 million off of?
I know, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't see
So
that.
yeah, so that's how we got into it, and
Mm,
why we're actually going into that. So we didn't know what we were getting into, though. We thought this was going to be easy. Everyone's like, "Hey, it's the same thing as residential. It's just instead of buying one door, you're buying 20 all at once." There, whoever says that's lying. Um, it is so much more difficult. It's doable. Everyone out there
right,
who
right.
wants to do it,
Of
it's
course.
doable. But just be prepared because it is not. It is. It is. You're not comparing apples to oranges. It was if doing that deal, it took us 5 months to close that deal. So we went under contract July 7th. We did
Hmm.
not close until December 23rd. Um, yeah,
Wow.
we were under contract for 5 months. Everything that could have went wrong went wrong. It was one of the hardest things I've ever been through personally. Um, you know, every day we were fighting new battles, not with the sellers, with the attorneys, with the banks, with our investors. Everything about it was a challenge, but we
Hmm.
pulled through, and that got the ball moving. That got the momentum turning,
Correct,
um,
correct.
and that's the most important part. Is just push through that adversity, and really, at the end of that tunnel, once you get that little snowball start going down the mountain, that snowball gets bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger.
Correct.
And right now we have two others under contract. One of them's a bigger one, it's a 28 unit hotel in Traverse City, and the other one is a smaller one in Lansing. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, now with the snowballs moving and we're getting momentum and we're picking it up. But yeah, so it's been a and really fun transition into this hotel space. We didn't really mean to get into this space, but we're realizing that it's a very lucrative spot that is pretty niche and not a lot of people are targeting. So
Yeah.
we're taking advantage of it while we can, Kevin.
Yeah, man. And smart man, smart decisions, man. And what you just explained is the epitome of you don't have to be great to start, but you have to start to be great. Like it's a big. I'm pretty sure like that was your biggest, if not one of your biggest projects to date. And with all the hurdles that you had to go through, even going forward, now you know what to do, what not to do, how to communicate with certain people, and things of that nature. So,
Oh,
great work, man. And I'm pretty sure, obviously, it took you out of your comfort zone, but at the end, you had success, and that's what we want to pick up from all of that. So, great. So, is are you working on it? You said your other projects that you have going on, Traverse City and Lansing, are they are bigger projects than that
yep.
Bay Inn?
Yeah. So
Okay,
well,
nice.
the one in Lansing is a little bit smaller, but the one in Traverse City, yeah, it's a 28 unit right on the bay. So we're pretty excited about that. We are under contract right now. Projected closing date is May 4th. But what
Okay.
I've learned about projected closing dates in the commercial realm, uh, it's projected.
Right. Oh yeah. That's the key word. Projected.
Exactly. So we'll see. So we'll see when it actually ends up closing. But it's what we've learned is we sat down after we closed on the Bay End, me and my partners, and we really like took apart everything that happened and what lessons we could extrapolate from it.
Correct.
And one of the biggest things was that we relied heavily on third parties. So instead of going directly to mortgage lenders, we went through mortgage brokers. Instead of going
Mm.
directly with the sellers, we were working through sellers' attorneys and like using our attorneys too. So what we
Right.
realized is that through these layers of communication, things are lost and it's hard to convey what we actually mean.
Oh man.
So we just wanted to go straight, straight to the source as much as possible. And it really cuts off a lot of headache by going. It's a little more work for us,
Yep.
but going straight to the source of the loan, going straight to the source of the seller, going straight to the source of all the legal stuff instead of going through circles, um, has really been a huge difference, and it's really been a lot easier and smoother this time around. So
Yes, man. You're speaking on it, man. I'm listening to this audiobook now, Talking to Strangers by Malcolm Gladwell. He just talks about how how miscommunication destroys the nation. I mean, that's the overview of it, right? And you have to communicate with somebody. There could already be some type of miscommunication just from dialect alone. But if we're talking about having translators per se in between, with you talking to your lawyer has to translate to their lawyer has to translate to them. There could be so much lost in that process, man. So
100%.
going directly to the source to hold that communication, I think is a valuable lesson in that story.
Yeah, 100%. So
Thank you for sharing that. I got some statistics from the National Association of Realtors, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, and the U.S. Census Bureau. I want to throw one at you. It's saying in September of 2022, the Metro Detroit area has been recorded of having a high housing shortage. You having a development company, how do you feel like Cook Development can help with this housing shortage?
yeah, 100%. There's definitely, undoubtedly, I completely agree. There is a housing
Hmm.
shortage.
Hmm.
The fundamentals right now of the housing market, the issue is that land is not as cheap as it once was.
Mm.
People aren't letting go of the land the way they used to let go of land. And they
Hmm.
think the land is more valuable than it is, but raw land really isn't that valuable. Developed land is valuable
Got you.
because raw land you can't do anything with it except for use it, farm it, hunt on it. But developed land, now you can build on it, and now it's
Mm.
valuable. So one of the big issues we're running into right now is one with the sellers of raw land. The sellers of raw land, they see this housing shortage and they think their land is worth astronomical values.
Right.
Actually, we're the ones that have to go through all the work, take all the risk, and develop the land to make it worth that value. And
Correct.
so a lot of sellers of land think their land's worth more than it is, and that's problem number one, because they don't understand that developing it is where the value comes from. The second problem is actually with all the cities and municipalities and the townships. They've gotten so strict on what they need right now, that the process takes so long. You used to be able to get a piece of land and get it all approved and ready to go within a year. And now, we've been working on a couple of these projects for a couple years. And one project, even since I started, we've been working on it almost 3 years now. Um, and it's not even ready to go. And,
Mm,
basically, we have to hold that land, pay any loans and taxes, everything we have on it during that time. So, one, the land is just scarce, and what land is left is being, pumped. The value is hyperinflated. Two is that it's taking so long right now with all the municipalities, the townships, the state, the counties. And then three is that the cost to develop is so high as well. So
mm,
all the material costs have gone up like
yeah,
crazy. To bring
yeah,
in sewers now, it costs so much to bring in new sewer lines. It costs so much to bring in, new roads. Where before, it was a fraction of this cost before I would say before COVID really hit. That's when inflation started.
right.
So those three things, the fact that the land is more scarce and what land that is still left is so expensive, the fact that it's taking so long with the permitting processes with all the cities and counties, and then three, the fact that there's such a trade shortage and a material shortage that the cost to develop is actually so high. And those three things are just really playing into, the shortage of housing in this area because it's so expensive and so time costing to build new stuff. So we're doing what we can to answer your question, to help really put more houses into the markets to really help with the shortage. But it's really hard for us to do that because of those three things. And that's why we're
Gotcha.
seeing more and more of these big companies, Pulte Homes, MI Homes, these publicly traded companies that are really eating out the family owned companies like us because they
Yeah,
have public money where we don't have that. And they can afford to you know have 100 projects going at once that each take 3 years to even get started because they have
right.
the public money. So
Correct. Oh,
that's the issue that we're seeing around the board is you know the little developers are going to start disappearing more and more. We've already seen it in the last 15 years,
mhm.
but more and more of the smaller little family owned development companies are going to disappear more and more and be kind of gobbled up by the big corporate owned guys that are on Wall Street. So, but yeah, we're doing what we can to build
Yeah,
as many houses as we can. So
yeah, yeah. I was essentially gonna ask, like, with you being a smaller family owned company, what are you doing to try to avoid being engulfed in that type of wave of, big companies?
yeah, yeah. So what we're doing, there's a couple things. One, we're niching down. So what the big builders
Uh,
can't really do is they'll never be able to niche down on infill, like custom infill stuff.
right,
What they
right.
can do is they can do big, huge developments full of cookie cutter houses. But what they'll
Hmm.
never be able to do is like go down the street, see one house that sits on a triple lot or a double lot, tear that house down and build two or three unique houses.
There you
They'll
go.
in more expensive areas. They'll never be able to do that because it doesn't make sense for them. So that's one strategy that we're adopting is that we're actually doing more infill instead of ground up. Because the bigger companies can't really compete with that. The other thing is instead of taking all the profits from the development and the building and putting it right back into the development and building company, it's diversifying those into other investments, other real estate investments, such as these hotels, such as apartments, things like that. And then actually building on using our infrastructure, the development company and the building company, and adding on to these existing structures. So, for
Mm,
example, the Bay Inn, in 3 years, we're going to build a whole nother wing to the hotel. I haven't really told
wow.
anyone too much about that yet, but that's our plan.
Exclusive closing table. Bomb
Exactly.
drop.
There you go.
Go ahead.
Closing table bomb drop. But yeah, we're going to be adding a whole nother wing to the iconic Bay Inn Hotel. And we're going to basically use our development company to go up and do that. So we're using our infrastructure in different ways and adapting it. And that's how we're going to be able to stay afloat and compete against these
Yes,
big,
sir. Yes,
big
sir. Yes, sir.
companies.
Oh yeah. Love that, man. I'm glad that you have a plan in place for that, man. Because if you don't, then you probably could be one of those little fish that get ate up by the big fish.
100%.
Austin Cook, let's talk about you outside of real estate, outside of your development company. Can
Hmm.
you explain what does Austin enjoy doing outside of handling his business? Who is Austin Cook outside of that?
Yeah, Kevin, I really like two things. One, I like to climb. I used to, as I said, I used to be a climbing guide, mountain guide.
Hmm.
So I spend I go on one climbing trip a month where I spend time in the mountains or spend time skiing, whitewater kayaking down mountains, those kind of things. Just doing mountain sports one weekend a month, and then I like to travel to new places. So what I've actually been doing recently is going to real estate meetups around the country,
Mm,
and then it counts as a business write off as well because I'm going for
correct.
networking purposes.
Yep.
So I've been traveling. I'm actually going to New York tomorrow for it.
Okay.
So yeah, I've been traveling all across the country monthly, going on a couple trips, basically to network and to try to learn new things, see new places, and that's kind of what I like to do. I know it's kind of intertwining with work a little bit. It's not really outside of work, but
Gotcha.
as an entrepreneur, it's tough to really separate things.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know,
Yeah.
So it's like instead of working a hard 40, as entrepreneurs, we often work like a soft 80.
Mm,
We're kind of always working 16 hours a day or so, but it's not like, hardcore work like we're out there like we have to be here at this time. It's
right. Right.
we're kind of working in the background because we love it. And so that's for me, I'm always kind of working that soft 80. Right now it's all about traveling and networking, to find more, because we are a private company, find more investors wherever I can, to invest in our company, and so that we can keep growing. So
Nice, man.
yeah.
Nice, man.
Well,
Thank you for providing some great insight, great knowledge, and letting us into your life and your experience, Austin Cook. Thank you for being here. Before we leave, I need you to do us a favor. If you have any last words and or want to tell the people how they can reach out to you, please do so now.
yeah, guys, I think my last words here, you know, I don't really know where you guys are at in your business, where you are at in your life, but the one kind of parting knowledge I want to leave with you is to just, if you consistently take massive strategic action, no matter what you want in life, how unobtainable it might seem, if you consistently take massive strategic action, you will hit that goal. You will be able to go it. It's not enough to just take massive action. You have to strategically take massive action. You also have to do it consistently. And with that combination, it's super simple and it sounds so cliche, but it's true. You can really accomplish whatever you set out to accomplish. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that the second parting word is that, if you're not taking time to listen to podcasts like this, and if you're not taking time to read books, and, if you're not taking time to watch, informative YouTube videos, then you're really missing out, on a lot of potential because you don't
Yeah.
know what's out there unless you expose your mind to it. But it's also a double edged sword because so many of us
Mm,
are stuck listening to podcasts, watching these YouTube videos, and reading these books. And it makes us think that we're taking action, but we're actually not. We are procrastinating in a way that works
mm,
for us. So, what you got to do is you got to really combine it. So, you got to, listen to podcasts like this, go and read some good books, but then you also got to take that action.
correct.
Extrapolate what you learned here from Kevin, and go and apply that. That's the biggest thing. So, take consistent, massive strategic action, and then also keep learning, but make sure you take action on that learning. Those are the two things I want to leave all your listeners with there, Kevin. And if you guys
There
want
it
to reach
is.
me, Instagram is probably the best way. My name's spelled a little bit different, so it's at Austin Cook, but it's at
Mm,
AUSTONCOOK. So
mhm.
Austin with an O, and you guys can find me on Instagram. So
There it is, man. Thank you. Thank you so much, man. Powerful last words, Austin. You were speaking to me also. I appreciate that motivation. Any and everybody watching right now on YouTube, please do us both a favor and give us a like, share, and also subscribe to our platform. And if you're listening on Apple, Spotify, or any other podcast platforms, please do the same. Give us a like, a 5-star rating, and also subscribe for our latest content. We want to leave a question for our audience also, Austin. I want to ask, how do you think real estate agents can improve the buying or selling process for their clients? Let me know what you think by dropping your comments below. Other than that, we'll see you next time.